We've reached the quarter mark of the Eagles season, kind of.
That'll be after the first quarter Sunday.
I hate it.
Around 5:10 Eastern time Sunday.
Kind of the quarter mark.
Yeah, kind of. It's a 23% mark.
Yeah. But we're going to treat
You hate that, don't you?
I hate it. You know that bugs me. 17 games is just...
Dave likes everything symmetrical,
yeah,
even numbers, easy to break up.
Yeah, it bothers me.
Well, it'll be an 18-game season soon, so at least we'll have a halfway point.
And we'll have thirds then.
Well, thirds.
Yeah, I'll love that. That'd be great.
Dave will like thirds.
I'll work an extra week just for symmetry.
Well, I don't think we're going to work an extra week because they're going to get rid of a preseason game. I think we'll be down to 2 preseason games.
Oh, you're probably right.
And then a bye.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan.
162 is a great number. I mean, that's you can do a lot of things with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
154. How do you feel about that?
I'm a big fan of 154.
You remember it?
Baseball. Yeah, I covered baseball when it was 154.
Yeah. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Eagle Eye presented by Nissan.
We're going to do a whole pod on square roots today.
I'm fine with that. Yeah. I was never a huge math guy in school, but I appreciate how it doesn't change.
Yeah, math pretty much stays the same.
Yeah.
You want to start talking about 49? Maybe we could talk about 144 later in the pod as we explore.
It took me a second. I was like, 49.
As we explore perfect squares.
We are starting off like a couple of perfect squares in this podcast, but we have a bunch to get to. We talked to Zach Ertz on Monday a little bit. It was good to see his face. So we'll kind of get into some of what he had to say. Interesting things from Jonathan Gannon on Tuesday, explaining a big part of why their defense has been so successful. As always, we'll talk about Jalen Hurts. But first, we want to kind of talk about them being a quarter of the way through this season almost. And we're going to treat it like that. Rube, I just went through my position-by-position grades. And this is the way I do this typically is I grade each position after the game. And then the work is done for me. I just plug these into a grade calculator, and it spits out a letter grade at the quarter mark. So we figured we'd go through position by position and kind of see if the grade that is spit out is what we kind of think from the eye test.
Sounds fair to me.
All right.
Although like one really bad grade can bring down for 4 games, can bring down your grade.
It can. I experienced that quite a bit in school.
Did you get bad grades?
No, I was a pretty good student.
Really?
Yeah. I was better in college than I was in high school.
Same here.
Yeah.
I was like a C- in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was not. Yeah.
I was a good student in high school, but I was a very good student in college.
Yeah, I was too. When I moved from Teaneck to White Plains, I started getting A's in my second high school.
I figure once you start paying for it, you should probably try.
Plus, you're taking classes you care about. That was the big thing for me.
After the beginning.
Yeah, kind of. Some grunt things you had to take. But yeah, so there's a good parallel there. We can do a pod on high school versus college grades, but probably not today.
Probably not today.
Because we have square roots to talk about.
All right, Jalen Hurts and the quarterback position. It's position by position, but Hurts has taken every snap at quarterback. He's been tremendous.
He has, and it's been. I'm not shocked. I've written consistently that he's gonna take a big step this year. It's just a matter of how big. Maybe a little bigger than I expected as far as accuracy, but this is the guy I expected to see in command of the offense, understanding things quicker and better, dissecting what the defenses are doing, and getting the ball there. And he's got better weapons, and he's using them, or one really better weapon, and he's using him a lot. So it's really great to see. The kid works so hard, and he's worked for this.
He absolutely has. Through 4 games, 66.7%, 1,120 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, and on the ground, 205 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, in fact, what's he played, 23 games now? Or started 23 games, right? 4 plus 15 plus 4 is 23. So he's got the most rushing touchdowns ever, tied with Cam Newton by a quarterback after 23 starts. And I'm a big believer in a touchdown's a touchdown. Obviously they don't help his passing stats, but he's getting in the end zone. And they all count 6 points. So I've been super impressed by him. If he can keep this up, there's no question he'll be in the MVP race. Yeah,
I mean, he is right now for sure. When your team's 4-0 and your quarterback's playing this well, the one thing about him, and I think this is the best way to put it, last year they won games with him. This year they're winning games because of him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Washington game is a great example of that. I mean, they couldn't run the ball in that game, and he just made plays. That's not a bad front, not a bad defense. He just made play after play with his arm, and I think that was the next step for him. And to see him be able to do that is really encouraging.
Yeah. So the way the grades went each game, A- in the opener, A+ in that Monday night game, a solid A against Washington, and then a B+ in the last game. The only reason he had that B+ was because of that pick 6, which you had to ding him for.
Sure.
Overall, it comes out to an A-, 3.83.
Yeah, that's about right where he belongs. And
I you know what, looking back, if I was just going eye test, I'd go solid A.
Yeah, it's funny because considering the conditions,
yeah,
they put up 29 points.
It was really one bad play.
Yeah, it comes down to that statistically his worst game of the year, and it was a big win in bad conditions. So I'd be fine giving him a 4.0, but 3.83 is right there.
Yeah, I think so. Running back, Miles Sanders off to a really good start. 72 carries, 356 yards, 3 touchdowns. Done a little bit in the passing game, but most of his stats on the ground. The other guys have mixed in. We've seen some Boston. We've seen some Kenny Gainwell, even Trey Sermon in that last game. But Miles has been the bell cow.
Yeah, he has, and he's healthy. He's handling a big workload. He's running tough and physical and up the middle. He's really evolved as a runner into a guy who isn't looking to bust the big one. He's just kind of being assignment sound and hitting the hole. He's got a great interior of that offensive line, and the whole O-line can run block so well. And I think he's seeing holes really well. His vision is where it needs to be, and for the most part. And I've been really impressed. I mean, this team, Howie has so many decisions to make, so many tough ones. And Miles keeps playing like this. He'll be in his first Pro Bowl, and very, very difficult and intriguing decision that this team will have to make about how to go forward at running back.
Yeah, I mean, he's on pace for 1,500 yards. So, tough to not bring that guy back. And we'll see. We all know the caveat with him is he going to be there all year? Can he stay healthy? And that doesn't go away. We have to see it for an entire season. Sure. But, man, the player on the field, and he's really trusting. The run scheme has been so dynamic, and Jeff Stoutland deserves a ton of credit, not just for the offensive linemen playing well, but their plans and the way they're executing in the run game has been so dynamic. I think I saw it was something like 25 of his 27 runs the other day came from 11 personnel.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
It is.
And it's going to, if they start selling out against the run 11 personnel, guess what? It opens up so much of the passing game.
Yeah, you're right. I thought the second half Sunday, they really needed him. The conditions had gotten worse. He ran for 76 yards in the second half. They just kept feeding him. And I thought it was as well as he's played. And it's funny to think how much time he missed in the preseason. Missed like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so everyone's kind of like, oh, here we go again with Miles. But so far, so good.
Yeah. A- is what it comes out to, a little lower GPA than Ertz, which I think checks out.
Yeah. What's the exact number? 3.6 or something?
3.58.
3.6. You round it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where he belongs. I mean, I think the one thing that would get him over the top is being more of a factor in the receiving game. But he had a couple,
and or just that position being more of a factor, because that's kind of why Gainwell's here.
Yeah,
and he hasn't really excelled there.
Yeah, he had a nice touchdown run, and I asked Shane about him because he's got 9 career touchdowns in really limited snaps.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of touchdowns, but as far as volume, he hasn't been, especially in the receiving game. And that's where he's got to excel, and he hasn't.
Yeah.
So I think Miles would get an A+. The running back position gets A-.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go to receiver. A.J. Brown. He already has 404 yards. I mean, he's unbelievable. He's a cheat code.
He's averaging a 100-yard game. It's crazy. For him to have 94, 95 yards in that game, I mean, I don't know how you even run the passing game in those conditions. And he's better than I thought, Dave. And, I would see him here and there. You'd see him and you're like, wow, that guy's really good. That guy. But he is everything I imagine and so much more. It's just so physical, so hard to bring down. The first hit never gets him, plays hard, big plays at big moments. I don't know what else you could ask for. I mean, this is something the Eagles have been missing. Maclin and Deshaun had some really good years. I mean, Deshaun had some great years, but this is the best wide receiver play, I think we've seen since T.O.
Yeah. When you talk about all-around player.
And he's a little bit better guy.
Yeah, a better teammate, which actually does matter.
Sure, it does.
Yeah.
It does. He's not in there trying to bust up the locker room because he wants more money, which is what T.O. started doing late in that 2004 season. So he's a winner. Great guy. Just
A.J. Brown slant. If you're think about if you're playing a video game and there's a cheat code on it, that's it. I mean, that play is unstoppable.
I used to have the cheat codes for Frogger.
Yeah.
Just talking to AJ I think it was on Friday. He'd come back to practice after, he and his wife had their second child. And we didn't know if he wanted to talk about it because he's very private about his personal life. And he started talking about it. And, you just see that side of him. And he was talking about, what it was like when his daughter saw his newborn son for the first time. And, it's just, this guy's so, he's so sensitive and everything. And then he just goes out there and he plays like a beast.
Yeah.
He's a team first guy. He's unselfish. It's just been something to watch him day after day.
Yeah. And don't forget about Skinny Batman either.
Yeah.
I mean, Devontae Smith, it's 2 of the 4 games he's had huge performances, 89 yards in the one, and then of course the 169. And that's going to keep going all year because you're always going to get AJ the ball, but there are going to be times where the defense really kind of locks up on him, and Devontae's going to have his moments.
Yeah, and good luck covering both those guys. I don't know how you do that unless you have Slane Bradbury and nobody else does. Yeah, I mean, Devontae is – I mean, what's he got? He's got 266 yards himself. So they could both go over 1,000. I mean, it's possible. Quez has been – I mean, I think he's only caught 2 balls in that second game in the Vikings game. One of them was the big 53-yard touchdown. That's a little surprising. But when you have 2 guys like Devontae and and
Pascal's taken snaps from him.
Yeah,
in certain situations, and he's done a nice job.
Nice third down receiver. You can see Jalen likes throwing to Pascal. Mm-hmm. They're so different. Pascal's just so reliable. I mean, he's going to catch it on 3rd and 6. So kind of got that Jason Avant thing going. But that position has been. I don't know how many times, if we had done this podcast over the last 50 years, how many times we would say wide receivers are really good.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
What did the grade come out to?
A- 358.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. A- 383.
Oh.
They're higher.
And was Jalen 386?
383.
Oh, they're both 383.
Both 83, which makes sense.
Yeah. That's a common fraction.
Yeah. Tight end. Dallas Goedert. Just
you go down every position and they have a stud everywhere.
I mean, I'll kind of give it away here. Every offensive position ended up with an A-, which is good because they've been great.
It could be better.
Which is scary.
Yeah. I was just writing about that in my piece that I'm updating on whether this could be the greatest offense in Eagles history, which I think it can. And that's true. There's still a lot of meat on the bone. I mean, they haven't really put everything together in any one game.
Yeah. I mean, the second quarter, they are what's higher than A? What's higher than A+? I mean, they could do that. But that's the thing. It's we see it, and that should be the best thing about how good they've been is that they can be better.
Yeah, that's scary if I'm the rest of the league.
Yeah. Goddard, I mean, 16 catches, 240 yards, leads the league in yards after catch per reception, 12.8.
That's an insane number. Just throw short and let him knock people over. He's had a catch of 23 yards or more in every game, which
crazy.
He's averaging 15 yards a catch. I mean, wide receivers don't average that. There's not many. He's putting up wide receiver numbers, and he has for the last 2 years. If he doesn't go to the Pro Bowl this year, or the skills competition? Are they still going to call it the Pro Bowl?
Still Pro Bowl.
All right.
And they still get to be called Pro Bowlers.
Oh, whew. That's a relief.
Not to be confused with Pro Bowlers.
Pro Bowlers, like Dan Weber,
Yeah.
Dick Weber, whatever his name was. Goddard. And, Jack Stoll's like the secret weapon on this team. He played like –
He plays a lot.
He plays like half their snaps. You never even talk about him or think about him, but he has a lot to do with the running game. And a lot and he's a good blocker down the field. So then when you're doing the grade, you got to factor in Grant Calcaterra's 40-yard catch as well.
Yeah.
So
3.58.
Yeah.
And then offense, or the offensive line, they got dinged a little bit early for some penalties that were pretty costly. But overall, I mean, they had it's very telling. They had their best game with 2 of their guys out.
Yeah,
that's how deep they are.
That's Stoutland.
Yeah,
I mean, for them to, and I mean, Sam Allo didn't miss a lot. How many snaps did Sua play? Like 12?
I think 11.
11 or 12. But Driscoll came in really early in that game, and there's just they've done this since.
He never played left tackle in the NFL.
It's crazy.
And he wasn't perfect,
no.
But who cares?
But he was good enough, man. Yeah. Whoever plays well. It's Stoutland. I mean, he's the best assistant coach I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Or the best position coach.
Sure, that's fair. Let's flip to the other side of the football. Defensive line, they ended up with a B+ total. That first game, without that first game, they would have been in the A territory. Right. That first game, they got gashed. They didn't get after the quarterback. Right. A lot of it was tied to the secondary and the way they were playing in that game. But since then,
and we've learned since then. I mean, the Lions have the number 1 offense in the league.
It changes your perspective.
It does change your perspective a little bit.
Yeah, so. And look, that unit, even after losing Derek Barnett, who said we won about him, was still a solid rotational player. They're still pretty deep.
First time in Eagles history, they have 4 guys with 2.5 sacks after 4 games. Last year, they had 3 guys with 2.5 sacks all year.
Yeah.
So that tells you how far that group has come. Still like to see him a little better against the run. This D-line has been all you could ask for.
Yeah, and Hassan Reddick is the real deal.
Yeah, he's that Lions game, you start to wonder a little bit, but it was his first game, and since then, man, I love those strip sacks, just knocking the ball out. Guys didn't used to do that, and it's such an art now. He's so good at it. And I thought Gannon made a really good point about him, that you just don't see a lot of guys that quick around the edge who are that powerful too.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about on the last pod. I mean, the strip sack at the end of the game, the clincher, it was just a bull rush.
Yeah.
And it gets set up because the tackle has to be ready for that.
Yeah.
Outside, but man, he's powerful and he sets things up. Really savvy rusher.
I gotta ask you this, because you're big on numbers and jersey numbers, but doesn't it bother you seeing a guy wearing number 7 rushing the passer?
Not as much as you'd anticipate.
I see Bobby Hoying out there, and I just can't help it.
No, I mean, no, it doesn't bother me because I watched him play in the 7 before.
Yeah.
So.
And Reddick has as many touchdown passes as Bobby Hoying had his last year here as a starter.
The only thing that the numbers that bothers me is the trend of wide receivers going all teens. I miss receivers.
You miss the 80s?
In the 80s. Because that's like I grew up with receivers in the 80s.
I grew up with receivers in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like Chris Carter and Mike Quick.
Yeah.
The 1980s. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I got you.
Do they have any? They don't have any in the 80s?
It's weird, right?
They don't have any wide receivers in the 80s, just tight ends. Yeah, that is odd.
I'd like to bring that back.
Okay. We'll have a talk with Devontae tomorrow in the locker room.
Yeah.
Ask him to change his number.
I don't think a lot of fans would be happy about that.
I think some of those low numbers look fast. Like 17 is a fast number.
Mm-hmm.
I like 17. Like, to me, 89 is kind of a lumbering.
It wasn't so fast when Alshon was wearing it at the end.
What's that?
It wasn't so fast when Alshon was wearing it at the end.
No, it wasn't. But to me, 87 to 89 are pretty lumbering tight end type numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, 88 has been I think Michael Irvin.
I just think of Keith Jackson.
Okay.
Anyway, so what else we got?
Linebackers. I mean, same thing as the D line. Yeah. First game they got dinged, it brought it down. So they ended up with an A-. It could be higher. We're talking about the Eagles linebackers after 4 games, or they have an A-. It could be higher.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And TJ just keeps getting better and better. Kaiser White is really solid. I think the biggest thing is that Nakobe Dean hasn't played because he doesn't need to play. And who are you going to take off the field?
Yeah, you can't.
Can't.
Yeah. Secondary, they've been very good too. A- for them, 3.83, even higher than the linebackers, because we've seen some tremendous performances.
Big time playmaking.
Yeah, big time plays from Big Play Slay, from James Bradbury, from Avonte Maddox. Those 3 combined for 5 interceptions through 4 games.
Yeah, and the Eagles had 10 interceptions all last year. Or 11. It might have been 11. Yeah, it's been so much fun. And again, it's like wide receiver. These are 2 positions where the Eagles have historically just been really bad. Mm-hmm. And you just like every offseason is like, what are the Eagles' priorities? Wide receiver, linebacker, and secondary. And they improved everyone, and they're all sitting here with A's.
Yeah. And that's the unit that should get better, because Epps is in his first season as a full-time starter, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson is learning how to play safety.
Yeah, and then Sunday you had Zach McPherson and Josiah Scott out there for almost the whole game for all but 3 snaps for McPherson, mm-hmm. and Scott played the whole game. So you have 3 new guys, really 4 new guys if you include Bradbury. Yeah. I mean, and just, Epps hasn't made the big plays, but I think he's been really good.
He's made some big plays. He had that stop at the goal line. He had the play in the opener where he closed and they were rotating safety. Like he's made some plays.
Yeah. But I'm talking about like as far as, turnovers and I mean, sacks. He could blitz. He could be a blitzer. He hasn't, had those forced fumbles, but he's been really solid.
Yeah, no complaints about him. Special teams. This is the lowest grade on the team.
And it's interesting. I just noticed, I mean, Epps started a few games last year, I think, but they started a secondary. The entire secondary was guys that weren't starters last year. Sunday.
Well, Slay started.
He started, but played 3 snaps. But as far as most of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that communication in the secondary is a big deal, especially with how much they want to be able to disguise stuff and rotate their safeties.
Right.
So they're still figuring all that out. And there have been a few miscommunications, but they haven't really led to huge plays. And that's impressive. That
is true. And that speaks to Howie as well. I mean, these are all, Howie inventions. Didn't they claim Marcus Epps on waivers?
Yeah, it was basically they cut Sendejo.
Right.
And then
they each claimed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sendejo went to Minnesota.
Could have traded him for each other. But yeah, Epps, Epps on waivers from the Vikings. Bradbury was a creative Howie signing. Josiah Scott was waiver claim from the Jaguars?
Trade.
A trade, that's right.
Howie traded a 6th-round pick for him?
And a 5th-round pick. And I believe that's what – no, it
was 1 pick.
Just 1 pick, yeah, you're right. Slay, big-time acquisition a few years ago, and CJ GJ just before the season. I mean, this is a Howie secondary. And
it's a Howie team.
Yeah. But just a lot of creativity in the secondary, not high picks, none of those guys were draft picks.
Special teams, worst grade on the team. It's still a B. It's not like they've been awful.
It really?
Yeah, it's a B. It was B+, B, B-, B+, because they've had some good moments.
Sure.
Jake Elliott's been very good. At times we've seen some big plays from Andre Sacheret or Kyron Johnson.
Well, one big play Sunday.
Sean Bradley. We've seen some plays. Overall, we need to see more in the return game. We need to see more from Aaron Sipas.
Interesting. Elliott's only attempted 5 field goals because they get in the end zone. They're so good in the red zone. It doesn't seem like a B special teams unit, but when you break it down, really the return game and the consistency from the punter, those long punts into the end zone drive you crazy.
Which is the weirdest thing, because that was something he was good at.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah.
And it's like, now we're like,
even try though. And Michael Clay was asked a good question about that, and his answer was kind of ridiculous.
Well, he said that they want to give their Gunner's a chance to.
But if he's in the corner, if you punt it into the corner,
Yeah.
The other side gunner is irrelevant to me. But I think punt coverage has been great. Kickoff coverage has been pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought, Agnew's a guy that can really tear you up. He had the one, it was, I think it was 27 yards. So the league average is like 23. So it wasn't a killer, but it could have been like a 6. But for the most part, I guess special teams has been okay. I just feel like they could be a lot better, a lot more consistent.
I agree. Coaching, another category that got really dinged by the opener.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like the game plan, especially once they got a lead in that one. Since then, A+, A. I gave them a C- in that first game. And I stand by that. So overall, it gave them an A- 3.5. But seeing what they've changed since that opener, really Gannon. I mean, I thought the mindset on offense in that first game was a little too lax once they got up big and it hurt them. But Gannon's done a much better job since that opener.
Yeah, you're giving up 4 touchdowns in 3 games. It's hard to beat that.
Yeah. And it's the way they're doing it. I mean, it's him finally realizing he's got these players that can attack. And attack doesn't mean blitz, which they're doing. It means a lot of different things, but they're doing all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it's playing man coverage, whether it's finding ways to get Jordan Davis and Fletcher Cox on the field together. I mean, he's figuring it out.
And I'm sure a lot of it is just so many new guys. Kaiser White's new, Bradbury's new, Reddick's new. So many guys who hadn't played for this team before, and they're all kind of just finding their way and figuring it out. And you can just see them getting better and better as it goes along. I mean, Jordan Davis is in that group, and just so many new pieces in that on that defense, and they're really coming together. Yeah.
Who's your biggest pleasant surprise?
My biggest surprise on this team, and there's a number of them, but I think it's TJ Edwards, just because he's a guy that's just gotten better and better. And, he started some games last year and he was okay. He started games 2 years ago and he was all right. It was like he was kind of like a slow, old-time middle linebacker type guy who could play the run. But he's just made himself, I think, through fitness, through learning the game, through comfort level, he's made himself really, really good player. He can cover. He's a good cover backer. He's a thumper in the run game. He can blitz. He's got 2 sacks, which is unheard of. He's got 5 career sacks. It's the most ever by an undrafted Eagles linebacker.
Wow.
How's that? And he's going to get more. I think Eagles haven't had a linebacker with more than 3 sacks since, like an off-ball linebacker. I mean, Connor Barwin, that kind of thing. And, I mean, Reddick technically is a linebacker, but that kind of player, Jordan Hicks had 3 1 year. I think Kendricks had 4 or 5.
Kendricks was a heck of a blitzer.
Yeah, he was a really good blitzer.
Then they stopped blitzing.
He's just a player who can do it all. He plays every snap. I think he's played all but 7 snaps this year. And just keeps getting better and so smart. He's got that, he's got the green dot helmet. He's the traffic cop out there, great communicator, good teammate, solid guy. If you had to ask me who the defensive MVP is on this team, there's a lot of candidates. Mine might be TJ Edwards through 4 games.
That's a good question. I don't think I'd pick him, but he's certainly on the short list.
I mean, you could pick Slay. I mean, there's Bradbury. Fletcher, BG, Reddick certainly would get votes. There's a lot of guys, but I think I would go with TJ Edwards. Okay. Been really solid.
Yeah. I'll give you my biggest pleasant surprise, and I'm not going to spend much time on it because we talk about this guy more than any other player, Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
I mean, I thought he'd get better. I'm pretty confident that he'd get better this year. I didn't see this coming. I'll be honest. To see the way he's playing right now, how much easier the game is coming to him, it's been not shocking, but really surprising to me. I thought it would be like a gradual improvement over this season, but to see it, like he's shot out of a cannon this year.
Yeah. I think the one, if you had to use one word to describe him, it would be just command. He's just in command. Mm-hmm. He's like an orchestra conductor back there. And he's just in such command that he understands, understanding the offense, his understanding of coverages and blitzes. It's all grown so much, and he's able to put it all together.
Yeah.
It's really been something to watch.
And it's not like I'm a Jalen Hurts hater. I expected him to be the quarterback next year.
Sure.
I expected him to do enough things to earn the right to be the franchise quarterback, but I didn't think he had the question answered after 4 games.
It's not a question anymore, is it? Yeah. Somebody asked me I was doing some radio show. I'm not going to identify the host, but he asked me if I think Jalen will be the quarterback next year. I'm like, this guy's an MVP. The guy might be the MVP of the league.
Yeah.
No, they're going to go draft a guy. Like, seriously, where are you going to find a guy better than how he's playing right now? You're not.
Yeah. Biggest disappointment.
And I went with special teams just because there's not a lot of candidates, first of all.
Yeah.
You could say Nakobe just because he's not playing, but I think that has more to do with Kaiser and TJ than Nakobe. I just, I think special teams has been really inconsistent. You'd like to see the return game go, and there have been some kind of ugly plays like, the blocked field goal and stuff like that. Penalty, some bad penalties. I think they had, bad penalty on a field goal where they had so there've been some shaky plays here and there. Muffed punt from Covey. Covey really hasn't gotten untracked, although he's showing some signs of maybe.
Kick return in the last game might be enough to stop those pooch kicks.
Yeah, he had 3 kick returns against the Jaguars, and they were 23, 23, and 23. So if you can just get 23 yards, that's okay. That's about the league average. Yeah. But I think as an area, I think they could be a lot better.
Yeah, I agree with you. I went with a position player, which was not easy because none of the starters have been disappointing, which is crazy.
Crazy, isn't it?
I'll go with
you can go with Quez, I guess, too, would be a candidate.
Yeah, but I also think that's just a product of,
the way
how good the offense is.
Yeah.
So
agree.
I went with Milton Williams, who I really like. I expected a jump from him in year 2, and we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
He had his snaps get cut quite a bit in the 4th game. He was 48%, 36%, 49%, all the way down to 28%.
And there weren't a lot of snaps to go around.
But the percentage
was
lower. I thought he was someone who really fit into the multiple scheme, and we haven't just all the other guys have flashed, and he hasn't flashed yet.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Certainly too early to give up on him or anything, but I expected more.
Yeah, and he was a guy last year who really came on stronger as the season went, but we'll see. We want to see that at some point.
Yeah, but you know what? The rest of the D-line is so good that if he's not producing, his snaps are going to go down.
Yeah.
And we saw that Sunday. You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
We talked about Jonathan Gannon a little bit earlier. I wanted to mention what he said in his press conference on Tuesday about takeaways and how big of an emphasis that's been.
Really interesting stuff.
What'd you make of it?
Yeah, he said we basically made that the centerpiece of our off-season kind of self-evaluation. How come we're not getting takeaways? What can we do to get more? He said they spent a month. They spent a month just working on that area, and he didn't get into any details of specifically what changed, but he said the way they teach it, as far as stripping the ball, the way they coach it, the way they teach it, the terminology, the way they communicate. Is there a way we can be clear about what we're looking for? And it was pretty interesting. You don't hear that kind of thing that often. And obviously, takeaways are a weird thing because you can have a really good defense and you just don't get them. They just don't come your way. But they've got 10 takeaways.
11, I think.
11 or 10. I think it's 10. It could be 11, but let's see. They've got 5 interceptions and they've got
you're right.
5 fumbles. They've actually forced 9 fumbles. Obviously a bunch of them were Jacksonville, but they only had 16 takeaways all last year, and they've had 4 straight seasons with 16 or fewer, which is NFL record. And they have 10 already. So something has changed. Reddick obviously is a big part of that. He just, those strip sacks are, to be able to sack a quarterback without even touching the quarterback because you're just touching the ball and knocking it out is great. PG in the Super Bowl. But Slay, Bradbury, you mentioned Avante, who, hopefully the Eagles get him back. They're making those plays when the opportunities arise, which they weren't doing last year or in really since 17. When there's a loose ball, they're landing on it. When a ball gets deflected, they're picking it off instead of just missing it. So whatever they came up with in that month of self-evaluation has worked.
Yeah. And there's always kind of a fine line with this, right? Like you don't want to sell out on trying to strip the ball and end up missing a bunch of tackles. And we've seen defenses try that.
Sure.
I think back to the Billy Davis days when they brought those orange dummies around the facility and they had them holding footballs, and every time a defensive player walked by, they had to hit the football. I mean, that was a bit much.
Yeah.
And you saw them miss plays because of it. So you have to make sure that you're a short tackling team before you go for strips.
Well, one thing about Reddick's too on Sunday, and he's got 3 in the last 2 games, they had numbers to the ball. So if you're whacking at the ball and you miss it and the quarterback still has it, they're still getting them down. Somebody else is. And that's the key. It's like if you're the only guy there, that's probably not the smartest play. The smartest play is to get the guy down. But yeah, that aggressiveness is huge.
There were 2 plays in the last game on Sunday, and it was actually 2 plays they didn't get the football that really impressed me. It was the one from Patrick Johnson in pursuit, chasing down, hitting the ball free. They almost got that one.
Right.
That would have been huge. And then the other one was a TJ Edwards play, and it was at the tail end of a 13-yard screen pass. I think it was Jamal Agnew. And the guy's wrapped up. TJ comes in with a peanut punch, tries to knock it out. Little things like that matter. And the ball didn't come loose, and it's a play that you don't even think about again, but just their emphasis is showing up.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can do it, but you have to be sound doing it, and that's what they're doing. And I'm sure that was part of the evaluation is, knock it out, but be sound in how you're doing it and when you're doing it.
Yeah. You got anything else from what Gannon said?
No, he was interesting today. Yeah.
Yeah, always fun to talk to him. Shane Steichen talked a little bit about what makes Goddard so good in yard after catch situations, and then also about what it takes for a player to play every spot on the offensive line. Like we've seen Jack Driscoll hasn't played center, but I remember even when they drafted Jack, he was starting to take some snaps
at center.
Before the draft.
Okay.
Like he wanted to just prove that he can do everything. So in a real pinch, not that there are guys in front of him, obviously, but he could even do that.
Yeah, and I think it takes so much physically and mentally to be able to do it. And Jack's a really smart guy, and I mean that's a lot. Like to be able to play both guards and both tackles. He'd never played left tackle before, and Shane said he took some reps in training camp at left tackle. I never saw him.
Yeah, so Stoutland explained that
maybe in walkthrough,
but not. Well, I mean, we never saw it.
And it was the same with Juergens at guard.
Yeah,
he talked about that, but I mean, he's played right tackle. He's played right guard. He came in early in that game and struggled early, and he was really good the rest of the game, and enabled them to run the offense. So. It takes a really special guy, 4th-round pick, being able to do that. He's so valuable in that role.
Yeah. I don't have it on the budget here, but injuries. Just wanted to mention, we asked Nick about them on Monday. Didn't get a ton of information, but the good news here is it doesn't seem like any of them are like super serious.
It was weird because he said, I'm not going to give you anything on them. And then I think you followed up, right? And said, Are any of them serious? And he said, no, I think everyone has a chance to play Sunday, but I don't want to say that.
But he did.
You just said it.
You just said it.
So it sounds like everything. Knock on wood.
The 5 guys I asked him about were Jordan Mailata, Jake Elliott, Isaac Seumalo, Darius Slay, and Avonte Maddox.
Yeah.
So I mean, heck, all 5 of those guys could miss Sunday, but at least it seems like these aren't long-term injuries.
Seems like you'll have them for the Cowboys. You would think certainly after the bye. We don't know about Dillard. He wouldn't say how close Dillard is because I'm thinking if
You'd
Jordan
probably at least like to get him a week of practice.
Yeah, but it's. I mean, if Dillard can practice this week and Mailata can't play, I would think he would start Dillard, but it might be Driscoll. I don't know. It depends how close Dillard is.
You got to see how he comes through.
Got to see how he is. And the other one is Boston Scott, who we didn't have a chance to ask him about. There's just too many, guys.
Yeah, it was funny. Me and you were going over because I knew I had the first question, so I'm like, I'm going over the list. I'm like, I got to cut this off at some point.
Yeah. So Devontae, who got banged up, came back in the game. We'll get the official injury report. I mean, we'll see practice tomorrow.
Well, no, we won't. There. That's an interesting part of this. Eagles are going to a walkthrough.
Oh, tomorrow's a walkthrough
on Wednesday, which is what they did toward the end of the last season, and it makes sense. They have so many guys banged up.
And they did it last week, right after the Monday night game.
Yeah, on a short week. But yeah, they were doing that last year, the second half of the year. Maybe it'll be a regular thing, or maybe they just don't want us to see who's practicing. We can see who's going into the bubble. We get a report.
We'll get a report later.
Oh, Cardinals are benefiting from that hour and a half.
Competitive advantage. But the important thing is, it looks like nobody's seriously, and that's the big worry.
Yeah. Speaking about the Cardinals, we had a chance to catch up with our old buddy Zach Ertz on Monday.
Yeah, one of my favorite guys, all-time Eagle, future Eagles Hall of Famer, Super Bowl hero, 9th all-time in catches by a tight end, and he'll play his former team. We talked to him on Monday.
Quite a revenge tour the Eagles are going on now.
It's kind of funny. You got the guy in Indy, and then Doug.
Even not that Deuce left on bad terms, but didn't hire him.
Yeah, Deuce opening day. So Ertz was weird. I mean, he was very guarded. He kind of always is guarded, almost always. He had that one press conference where he said, "I don't think I'm wanted here anymore." But he talked about just how difficult last year was, and really the year before, because it was before the 2020 season that the contract talks broke down, and
then he had a bad season.
And then he had a really bad season. It was the COVID year. It was bad all around. And he knew he wasn't coming back. I mean, they offered him like $10 million a year, and he wanted like $15 million a year. And they had Goddard, and so what are you going to do? He knew his time here was up, and I was really taken by how highly he spoke of Nick Sirianni and how Nick helped him make a difficult situation bearable. He said Nick was just a class act through the whole thing. Nick knew the story. He knew Zach was going to get traded. Zach knew he was going to get traded. And, he said he was just clear about everything. He said he had told an anecdote about how they, I guess, after practice, if somebody has a bad rep, his number's on the bottom of the screen. And,
they like hold everyone accountable on team meetings.
Yeah. And how he's like, I want to make sure there's no 86 up there. So he's pushing him, even though he knows he's going to get traded. And it was a difficult situation. Everyone knew how unhappy Zach was. Yeah. He didn't make a secret of it either.
He went through his teenage angst moment with the blonde hair.
Yeah, he did. So I mean, we all knew,
and it was tough for Dallas too.
It was a tricky position for him.
Dallas told me last week that there were times where he messed up. He was like putting pressure on himself because if I mess up this play, they might give to Zach.
Yeah. It was a really difficult situation for everybody. But this is something Nick's really good at is just keeping the lines of communication open. I'm sure he had talks with Howie, with Zach, with Dallas, and just made sure, look, this isn't ideal, but let's make the best of it and try to win some games, and that helps your value. And and he did, and he's played well. I mean, he's got 22 catches in 4 games. He's third among tight ends. He only needs 5 catches to tie Ozzie Newsome, Hall of Famer, for 8th place among tight ends. So 6 to pass him, 5 to tie. And if he plays at this level this year, next year, he could be in the top 5 all time.
Wow.
If he gets to 800, then you start thinking Hall of Fame. Plus, he's got the Super Bowl, and he's got I think 3 Pro Bowls.
3, yeah. 3 straight.
Yeah. So don't believe he's ever been an All Pro. So that could hurt him. But if he catches 800 balls,
tough era to be an All Pro as a tight end.
It is. I mean, because he's not Kelsey, he's not Kittle, he's not Gronk, but he's very good, and he's playing well. He likes playing with Kyler, and So it was good to talk to him.
What do you make of it? We'll get into the Cardinals.
And I should say he's got the House of Hope in Hunting Park, which is something he first told me about like 3 years ago that they had on their radar. They took an old home in Hunting Park, and they spent like $600,000 renovating it. It's opening in I guess early in 2023. It's going to be a safe haven for area kids who can go there and eat healthy food, learn, have educational stuff going on, mentorship programs, athletic programs. So just a place for kids to go after. There's going to be arts stuff and a place they can go and just be safe and spend time after school and not get in trouble.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing.
And the fact that he's still that connected to the city.
And we've seen a lot of guys like that. It's become a really cool thing.
Yeah.
You think about like Malcolm and even like Chris Long was the honorary captain at the game. I've heard Chris talk about like he didn't really have an NFL home because he started his career in St. Louis and they're not there anymore. And the Patriots are just churning guys in and out. So Philly's kind of become his home.
It's amazing to see how many players from
at least football home.
Yeah. How many players from the era that I covered, that I started, how many of them still live here? It's incredible. Guys from the 80s and 90s just made this their home because I think former players are just revered here, for the most part. And you can parlay it into, whether it's broadcasting or a business, Brent Selleck sells real estate. I think he works for the team still too, but put Brent Selleck on a billboard selling houses, a lot of people want that house.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see.
We'll talk about the Cardinals later in the week. Early thoughts about that team? They're 2-2. That whole division's 2-2.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of the Cards. I haven't seen them. I haven't had a chance to see them play. They kind of go by Kyler, who's really, really talented, but inconsistent and will make mistakes and hasn't really gotten to the point where he's just a really super consistent player. He showed signs of it a couple of years ago. They finished really poorly last year. But he's really hard to defend. He can make all the throws from weird positions. Gannon had a funny comment. He said, he's like, he described him like this. I don't know how you write that in a story, but he
for those of you listening, Rube just moved his arm in a serpentine motion.
Yeah, that's right. I'm thinking you're watching on YouTube, but for people just listening, his point was when he scrambles, he doesn't do it like in a clean arc. He just all over the place. And the ball could come out anytime or he could run.
And he runs like a little kid, which is funny.
He does. He's a challenge. It's a tough game.
But that passing offense, the Eagles are lucky that DeAndre Hopkins is still out.
Yeah, that's a break.
Yeah.
I think a big thing is, we'll see who the Eagles have. We'll know next time we're on a podcast. We'll know who they have and who they don't, most likely, and get a much better idea of the matchup. But it's not an easy game, and Eagles have a bullseye right now. They're the only undefeated team. Everybody wants to knock them off. And just mathematically, how long can you keep winning?
We'll find out.
Yeah.
All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye Podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. We'll be back with you guys on Thursday. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan.